This question comes from Andrea. Andrea says, being sensitive and intuitive, I know I have abilities, psychic abilities. How can I become confident in them? Ooh, good one. Here we go. So when it comes to becoming confident in psychic abilities, I'm actually going to release you from the, I don't know if guilt is probably too harsh of a word, but I'm going to release you of the pressure of becoming confident in them and tell you why you might be struggling with confidence. It's not your fault. Our brains are literally wired in patterns. So unless you have been open, amped, accurate, having all these experiences and completely trust and have faith in your abilities since you were born, there's going to be a period in your life where you doubted. And you doubted, and you doubted, and you weren't sure, and you had a lot of doubts and doubts and doubts and doubts. So when you're in that state, especially for years, you're looking at a solid skeptic for the first 31 years of my life. So I'll use me as an example. So for 31 years, I am a skeptic, probably not the full 31 because I'm sure I was pretty open when I was little, but I don't remember that. So I come to the age of 31 and I have this experience where my grandmother passes and then she shows up in my living room, scares the socks out of me, and I start to process what this all means and start connecting with her. Now, I experienced a ton of doubt for the first at least year or two because my brain was wired to doubt. My brain was wired as a skeptic for years. Now, in our brain, synapses fire in patterns. And when something happens to us, it can invite our brain to fire in a different direction. So we have these synapses and they fire. And they fire with what they're used to, what their belief structure is, what the habit is. Psychics aren't real, mediums aren't real, I'm a skeptic, that stuff isn't real. Firing in this direction. So my synapses in my brain for years and years were firing in the direction of it's not real, it's not real, it's not real. And then what happens is you have something really happen to you, an experience, whether it be psychic, mediumship, an intuitive experience happens to you, and your synapses in your mind for one moment fire in the other direction. That's really happening. That's really happening. And then the next day, they go back to the old habit. That's not real. That's not real. That's not real. So this is, if you're experiencing this, you are not alone. It's very common. This is a matter of building a new habit. And I'm not talking about blindly believing. I'm talking about collecting your experiences and putting them back in your face over and over and over again to remind yourself that it's real, that you shouldn't doubt. You don't have to doubt because it is real. Getting those synapses to fire in this direction more often until eventually the trust and the faith is there. So one of my favorite tools is what I call the No Doubt Notebook. And for those who've taken the Sage Method, you know exactly what I'm talking about. This tool was one of my best friends. And the No Doubt Notebook, what I did eventually, because I would have amazing experiences as a reader. The first 2 years in, I was working as a professional reader, and these things would come through that I would jokingly say, wow, you can't make that up. And the sitter would be, the person I was reading for would be like, yeah, that's right. And I'd be like, whoa, that's wild. This stuff's real. And my synapses are like, okay, fine. It's real. It's real. And I would go home and I would go to bed. And the next morning, my synapses my brain went back to firing the way it had for years in its old comfortable pattern, because change is hard. But this is on an actual neurological level that's happening. So I would wake up the next day and I would have another reading for that afternoon, and I'd walk around going, I wonder if I'm any good at this, or if this is even real, or doubt would come in, and and my husband at the time would be like, oh, come on. And because I can see that, I can understand it. So I started to write these things down. Every time I had an experience that was out of the box, accurate, couldn't have made it up, it kind of proves that this stuff is real, I would write it down in this notebook. And when I found my brain firing back in that old skeptic doubt firing direction, I'd open that notebook up and I would reread all of the experiences that I had that were accurate. And that would allow me to get back to this until such time. And you don't need a no doubt notebook forever. You just need it long enough to reprogram your wiring and your firing of the brain. So to get out of that old belief pattern and step into the new one around what's actually happening to you. So take any moment you have, psychic, mediumship, any intuitive moment you have, whether it be thinking of a friend and then the phone rings, thinking of somebody and then you run into them in public, singing a song on your way to work and then walking in the building and that song's playing. So any moment that you have where you know you're in that synchronicity, you're in that flow, especially if you do readings. So when you do readings, if information comes through that is accurate, but also like, wow, that's not something you just kind of pull out of the blue, write that down in the No Doubt notebook, and then let that notebook be your best friend. Every time you're feeling doubt, go back to it and say, okay, this is going to help build your confidence in your abilities, because that notebook is going to remind you that you are accurate. You do have, these amazing moments that come through and your confidence will build. But we don't have, I wish we did, but we don't have like, a little, person sitting here going, hey, you're good at this. And hey, yes, that was accurate. Remember last week when you told her that, she was going to get a new car, or something. I mean, like all of those moments, we don't have like a cheerleader cheering us on. So let that notebook be your cheerleader and remind you that the experiences you have are very real. And feel free to go back. If you're just starting creating this notebook, feel free to go back. You remember those times when that happened to me and it was unexplainable. That was an absolute spiritual experience. There's no other way to explain it. I recall once having to make a really big, and I'll just give a few examples. I remember once having to make a really big decision about a family member, a really big decision. And I had put it off for a long time because I didn't want to make the decision because I knew what I had to do. I had to set a healthy boundary. And I was getting energy work done with my energy worker, and I, stepped out of that and got into my car. Before I left, she said to me, you need to make the decision now. You need to set the boundary now. They are coming through and telling me to deliver this intuitive message to you that you have to set the boundary now. So I got in my car and I said to my guides, I didn't have great guide communication back then, but I just said to my guides, because I trusted that they were there, hey, listen, if what she said is accurate, if I have to make a decision right now, and she's telling the truth, can you please give me a sign? Pulled out of the parking lot, got up to the road, took a left right after another car, and that car right in front of me, license plate said truth. And I went, that's cool. So, and then I set the boundary. And I'm glad I did. Signs like that are remarkable synchronicities, write those down. When you deliver intuitive information to people and it's accurate, write those down. Keep these somewhere. Let that book be your cheerleader and help rewire you into the reality that you actually are in. So letting this go, like you're letting go of an old habit. So when it comes to how do I build confidence, it's not that you are struggling building your confidence, it's that it's hard to break old habits. So kind of release yourself from that one, let that one go, and have fun creating your notebook.